Hi, everybody. This is Steve Kenyon from 8 Seconds Media. Thank you for joining us for the Steve Kenyon podcast. Last week in Hermiston, Oregon at the Farm City Pro Rodeo, I'm in Gooding, Idaho today. The rodeo in Gooding goes on through this weekend. Last week I was in Hermiston at the Farm City Pro Rodeo. Had a chance to spend a lot of time with Dave Duquette. Dave is with the organization called Western Justice, which is lobbying very, very hard on behalf of all of us in the Western way of life. Dave and I talked about some of the issues we all need to be aware of right now, including some things that are still simmering in the Los Angeles area. Here's that interview with Dave Duquette. Thanks for joining us for the Steve Kenyon podcast. I am really thrilled to be in the home of a really good friend, a gentleman named Dave Duquette. Dave is behind the organization known as Western Justice, which is working tirelessly behind the scenes on behalf of a whole lot of Western lifestyle issues, Western lifestyle questions, animal issues, all of that. Dave, welcome. I guess I shouldn't say welcome because I'm in your house. So thanks for having me. How's that?
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for coming over, Steve. I'm glad you were in town when I was actually here and we could set this up.
Yeah, here at the Farm City Pro Rodeo in Hermiston, Oregon is where we are. Dave is actually gone from home as much as I am, I think. You're here for about 2 days, and then you're headed to California. I want to talk about Western Justice, and I want to talk about a lot of the things you're up to. I want to start by talking about what it is that you are doing in California. I hate to say this. My theory in life is that, especially in our Western way of life, every bad idea starts in California. And then the idea is to at least try to contain it there if we can't stamp it out. What's going on in California?
So the ban on rodeo is still going on. You know, we kind of... In Los Angeles, city of Los Angeles trying to ban rodeo. You know, I've had some people recently that have messaged me and said, hey, where are you guys? You know, we haven't had an update on Los Angeles in a long time. Well, we beat that horse for 2.5 years. It's been going on for 2.5 years. Western Justice has spent about $75,000 to $10,000 a month for 2.5 years on this issue with the lobbyists and all that. And they're kind of sitting on it and they won't vote on it. It's ready to be voted on, and we thought it was going to be voted on a year ago, and now we've held it off. And the Western Sports Industry Coalition, if it wasn't for what we've been doing, it would have already been voted on and passed. So we're all headed down there. Tuesday, the coalition is going to be very well represented from folks from Bill Pickett, the Compton Cowboys, the local, some other local folks, the Charros and PBR. Everybody's going to be at the city council, and we're going to go. We finally got some in-person meetings. Because of COVID, we could never get in-person meetings.
Right. So you've been asking people to contact the Los Angeles City Council respectfully and explain, you know, why banning things like rodeo and those kinds of issues, not a good idea, obviously. Is what's facing the LA City Council, I forget exactly how the documents read in the legislation, or the proposed ordinances, I shouldn't say legislation read, but is it actually physically a ban on animals in entertainment, on rodeo, things like that? Or is it a ban on the tools that would go in, you know, things like the spurs and all that?
It's all,
what are they banning?
It's all implements, what they're calling implements of torture. So flag straps, spurs, ropes, wire tie downs, which nobody has a bare wire tie down in anything.
Right.
You hurt a horse pretty bad doing that. They don't even know what these things mean or what they are. But they've been very disingenuous over the last 2.5 years, because they sit and talk about how, you know, the author of this says, well, we're not trying to ban rodeo. Well,
we're just banning all the equipment you need to have a rodeo.
And his biggest supporter, Shark, you know,
right.
He actually talks about in several articles how, and on his website, how they effectively have banned rodeo in other places by using this method. So yes, they are trying to ban rodeo,
right.
And they're going to ban rodeo. But I mean, the good news is the coalition is already set up and ready to go. We are going, if they do pass it in LA, we are going to sue the city of LA, which is going to be very costly.
Right.
But we are going to sue the city of LA because we can't let in people, you know, the number one thing I hear is, oh, just let LA go. You know, they're crazy out there, let it fall off in the ocean, or comments like that. We cannot let the second largest city in the United States ban rodeo without a fight.
Right.
Well, one great thing, and then, I hear people tell me they don't want to support it because they don't believe we can win in LA. Well, guess what is the biggest thing in California? These liberal politics down there, and it's not, is freedom of expression, freedom of speech, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a First Amendment right for freedom of expression and freedom of speech with rodeo, and that is our expression.
Right.
The charros, their Sharia is freedom of expression. So that's where we're going with it.
And I don't want to spend all of our time on this, but this is an important issue,
right.
And we'll revisit it again when we get done. Part of, as I understand it, again, correct me if I'm wrong, part of what is being discussed in Los Angeles would not just impact rodeo. It would impact, you mentioned the charros. It could literally impact equestrian groups wanting to ride in the Rose Parade, correct?
Correct. And it will impact, without a doubt, the Olympics in 2028. They have the Olympics in LA in 2028. So the
no show jumping, things like that.
Well, one of their things that they're saying are implements of torture is fixed spurs.
Wow.
So what about all the jumpers that ride post spurs?
Yeah.
Or the English or the dressage people that ride a post spur, not a spur with a free moving route. I mean, do you think, and honestly, if they do pass this, that's probably going to be one of the biggest things that we can change. Because then they say, well, we're going to carve out the council member that's brought this up said, well, we'll just carve out the Olympics. And well, then it's not about taking care of the animal. It's about rodeo. You're saying it's not about rodeo. It's about torture. So if that's an implement of torture to you, then
yeah.
We feel pretty good about a lot of it, but one of the things that they're trying to throw their hat on is no ropes at all. I mean, not even to catch anything that's, a bull or whatever. So they're trying to say that you cannot, take down an animal at all with a rope or use it to subdue an animal.
Wow.
So if they do that, there's several people right there. Dale Gibson, stuntman, and Team Roper, avid Team Roper's got his own place right there in LA that's got, he puts on rope-ins and pin-ins and all kinds of stuff. There's several groups within the city limits of LA that have team ropings all the time, little team roping clubs. And they've been around for 75, 80 years. And they're going to be in trouble. Yeah. But then they say, well, we're not going after the private people to do it. Well, that's not how it reads. They'll be able to go after it. And they've already proven that that's a disingenuous thing to say because they've already proven in other areas where they pass this, like in Pasadena and other places, they've already passed this over the years that they go after people on their private ground.
Did a similar measure to this one? Is there another state where there's a similar measure to this? Or is this brand great?
It happened. This one.
I'm thinking something in Pennsylvania.
Pittsburgh passed in the 80s.
Okay.
It's either the 80s or the 90s. Pittsburgh passed it. But we've been working on, there's groups that have been working on getting that passed or redone to get it revoked, basically.
Before we go on off this topic, what do you need people to do? Are you still hoping that folks will send letters? Can they go to the Western Justice website and find all the contact information?
Yeah, they can still do all that. And it's going to help. I mean, I think they're going to get this thing voted on pretty soon. But we have, the council president is not, with all the things they have going on in LA, he doesn't need this to be a bad spot in his deal right now.
I'm kind of watch the news a lot, and it seems to me there's a lot of other stuff going on in Los Angeles.
Right, they've got a lot bigger problems.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's talk about Western Justice. I want to start here. Tell me about your background. We're here at your place. You've been in the horse business. You've been around this lifestyle your whole life, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I kind of grew up around the Kelsey McLean Rodeo Company. So, but I never got into rodeo. The only thing I wanted to do in rodeo was be a pickup man because, I rode enough crappy colts and broncs that wanted to kill me that I didn't feel like I needed to go pay to get beat up. So I trained reiners and rein cow horses for 25 years, team roped a little bit. I had to rope a lot anyway, cowboying. So it wasn't there again, that wasn't something I just went and did for fun. I was too busy. I wanted to show cow, horse, and reiners what I wanted to do. So I did that for over 20 years, and I still give lessons and things like that here at the place, and got some non-pros. I don't do a lot of it because I'm not around a lot. So, but that's my kind of my history in the horse world. But back in 2006, I mean, when they started shutting down the slaughter plants, that's when I got involved with politics, because I knew with the sales that I would do, I went from the bottom all the way to the top. I didn't sell Kenyon horses, but I sold horses that were in the $1,500 all the way to the $150,000 range.
Right.
So I knew I had a unique view of the market. Not unique. There's a lot of people that did it, but I had a pretty unique, because I went all the way up into the high level horses too. And so I knew what it was going to do the horse industry. And, you know, back in the heyday of the horse industry was 2005 before they did that. And then we had 2008, you know, the perfect storm of the plant shutting down, the economy taking a crap. And that's when horse welfare went in the toilet. And, you know, that's all history now. But I mean, I do a lot with the tribes right now, because the tribes are the ones that have the biggest problem with feral horses, because they don't have a subsidy with the federal, like the federal government does with their BLM horses. So the tribes right now, we fight the SAFE Act. The animal rights groups have been pushing this SAFE Act, which has stopped all horses from going across the borders even. So the only outlet that these tribes have right now, like Yakima, the Yakima Indian Reservation, when they first started finally collecting them and shipping them, they had over 22,000 horses.
Wow.
Ecologically, they can only have 1,200 horses.
Running loose on the reservation.
22,000, yeah. And they're down below 10,000 now, but they've been shipping a lot to Canada. Well, those horses up there are so inbred that they are, I mean, nobody wants them because they're so inbred. They would be a pet, if anything, and they're not very good pets because they're wild. They're plumb wild. And they're a little bit loopy because they're so inbred. But I mean, I've seen, we took, when I was worked to protect the harvest, we had the Lucas Oil helicopter up there, video on those things. And I saw one horse, and it looked like about a yearling or a 2-year-old stud, but he was loping across the snow, and his head was longer from his ears to his nose than his neck. And his back was straight as a mule, and they're deformed, they're inbred. They don't get, I mean, maybe 700 pounds is a big one now.
Right.
Because the big ones can't survive out there.
Yeah.
There's nothing to eat. So they're like billy goats out there now.
22,000, I'm just imagining 22,000 horses.
Well, the Navajos have 100.
Wow.
Yeah. The Navajos, on the Navajo, and it's the biggest reservation in the United States, but still there's nothing.
12,000 horses is a lot of horses.
In that country.
Yeah.
You know, think about that, where Navajos are.
Hot, dry, maybe not a lot of grass, desert.
Yeah. And when coyotes can take a horse down, it's pretty sad. And there's a lot of video of coyotes taking a horse down on the Navajo reservation.
So when people talk to us about animal welfare, animal rights more than animal welfare, we're in the animal welfare business.
Right.
I think I can say that correctly. And,
Yep.
You are advocating for the welfare of these animals.
Yep. The animal rights groups tried to hijack the welfare, moniker. And we fought back pretty hard, because we are the stewards of the animals. We're the best stewards of all these animals. And our welfare we're not animal rights, but we treat our animals probably a hell of a lot better than PETA, because PETA kills more animals than they give out or, adopt out.
So 2006, is that when you got involved with Protect the Harvest?
Yeah. No, 2011 or 10. Forrest Lucas saw me on Brett Baird's show talking about the horse slaughter deal, and he saw me on Brett Baird's show back in 2010, and he goes, he got somebody to find my phone number, and he cold called me, and it was kind of funny because
that's interesting. Hi, this is Forrest Lucas.
Well, I didn't know I'm not a gearhead. I had no idea who I was talking to, and I talked to him for an hour and a half, and he went on about how he had a ranch in Missouri that had 6,500 mother cows. And I thought, man, that's a big outfit no matter where you are.
Yeah.
And I thought, and I didn't think anything of it. So I called my friend Mindy Patterson from the Calvary Group, who I worked with quite a bit, and she was right down there. I said, this guy, he's kind of sounded like a mumble talker, or he was drunk when he called me. And it was Forrest Mumble Talks on the phone. I found out that, but anyway, she goes, well, I said, he's got 6,500 mother cows. I said, and she goes, well, what's his name? And I said, Forrest Lucas. She's like, holy crap, Forrest Lucas called you?
Yeah.
I said, yeah. She goes, I'm not even going to tell you, just Google him. So I Googled his name and I called him right back. And I go, Forrest, how come you didn't tell me who you were? And he starts laughing. He goes, well, I gave you my name. I said, yeah, but you didn't tell me who you were.
Right.
And he started chuckling. He goes, well, I didn't think it was that big a deal. And I said, Forrest, you're a pretty damn big deal.
Yeah.
So that was.
Did he have the football stadium named after him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But that was the point in my career of doing this stuff when I realized that a man of that stature and that success and with a retail product was actually going to put his name on doing some of this stuff. I took this huge sigh of relief because I had been pushing. I know some of the wealthiest people in the country prior to meeting Forrest through the horse business, and they were all behind what I was doing, but they would never stick their head out. It was like they were all hiding behind me pushing,
right.
But they'd never stick their head out. So it was before it was even woke was a word, or going after people was a big deal.
So you start Western Justice. Mm-hmm. How long ago?
Well, I left Protect the Harvest. I worked for Forrest from late 2011 till 2020.
And then you started Western Justice right in the middle of COVID.
Right in the middle of COVID.
Nice timing, did you?
Yeah, February of 2020 is when I started Western Justice, yeah.
And COVID hit in March, and you still managed to go forward.
Yeah.
At least you had lots of time on your hands.
Yeah.
Be able to look at
I got to sit around and work, yeah.
So what is if I'm sitting there on an airplane and I say, what's the purpose of this Western Justice thing? What are you going to tell me?
Basically to protect our lifestyle. The thing that I try to explain to people is the horse industry has always had, a voice in D.C. with the American Horse Council.
Right.
They are more focused on the English, the thoroughbred, and the Jockey Club basically runs that organization. The Western world, and I've called them out. I've called these groups out for not helping the Western lifestyle in our world, which we are about 75 to 80% of the domestic horses in the United States. So I've tried to get them to do things over the years, and I organized a big coup in 2009 at the American Horse Council's, their annual meeting in D.C. And it wasn't because I was trying to take everybody from them, but I had every state American Horse Council at a meeting the day before theirs started at the hotel across the road in D.C. And we sat and talked to them. And they wanted to defect. And this is probably the biggest mistake I've made in doing all this stuff. And I said, no. I said, being a Marine, I don't want to divide. I want to divide the enemy and conquer the enemy.
Right.
I don't want to divide our own group.
Right.
So I want to keep everybody.
We want to unite.
So I wanted everybody to stay over there, but then come help us.
Right. And
instead of, I probably could have built a huge grassroots deal from 2008 on and be really big right now. That's, like I said, that was probably a mistake, but I don't have a guilty conscience for doing it. You know what I mean? So I let it all play out. But the Western horse world has never had a voice. And if you think about who's in it, the ranchers, the rodeo world, and the Western horse industry,
yep.
And the amount of people that are in the cutting, the reining, the cow horse, and that stuff.
How many horses or members are registered with the AQHA right now?
Right.
By itself, millions.
And if you put all of those together, and we all came together under one blanket, there's nothing we couldn't stop. There's so much horsepower, literal horsepower with the people that are involved.
You put together, you mentioned something at the beginning of this conversation, and you just mentioned being a Marine. Thank you for your service, by the way. That you'd really like to see people unite.
Mm-hmm.
Under the banner of Western Justice has been created something called the Western Sports Coalition,
mm-hmm.
which is, I'm going to put my definition on it, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. which is an organization of diverse groups within the Western sports industry that, quite frankly, a lot of us thought nobody would ever be able to get working together under one tent. From the PBR to the PRCA to the AQHA, the Bill Pickett Rodeos, and there are
Charles and
dozens of other. I mean, if you look at your website or you look at the number of logos of the Western Sports Coalition, it's got to be 30 or 40 out.
Oh, it's almost 60. Yeah.
Is it 60?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm naive. I didn't think anybody'd ever get that many people together under one umbrella. How'd you do it?
That was a lot of hustling. And a lot of, I don't want to call it shaming, because this wasn't really shaming, but I'm like, these guys are on. Why aren't you?
Right.
And some of the biggest organizations were the hardest ones to get to do it because of the bad blood. Bad blood between them, or they're all competing organizations, so they don't generally work together. They're working against each other in the market. So that's how I did it. I just kept hounding them and saying, this is what we need to do. And they all agreed. They saw it. I mean, it's not like these are dumb people. These are smart people to be in the positions they're in. So they all, once they understood it, they all started to come together.
There is, I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, there is a tendency in our lifestyle, I think, and all of us, including me, have done it, to focus way too much on who won the last horse show, who won the last rodeo, how much money did so-and-so make this year, and not enough on the elements working behind the scenes in local county commissioners' meetings and city governments who would like to take our lifestyle away.
Right.
Did I just make a correct statement?
You sure did, for 100%. I mean, we are part of the problem we have in agriculture as a whole is we work our asses off. Right. We have to make a living, and to get ahead, you have to work.
Farmers and ranchers don't have a lot of time to go lobby their local state legislature.
And the ones that they get to a certain level where their family can do stuff and they can go do it, that's great. We got some great people out there that are doing that stuff. But as far as, and one of the problems with agriculture is that, Gilbert Aguirre is down there in Mississippi, San Juan, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's the name of that rodeo?
Just behind the rodeo in San Juan Capistrano.
Yeah. So I was talking to Gilbert when I first started doing the coalition and putting all this together with LA. Somebody gave me his name. I'd never talked to him before. I called him up and we had a great conversation. But he reminded me that when they went to go ban rodeo in his area, which they did, but he got an exemption for his rodeo, nobody came to help him. So he was reluctant to want to help out.
Right.
And not for very long, but he was reluctant or felt reluctant because nobody came to help him. So that's what I told him we are. We're the cavalry. We're coming in to help out where these things go or start to happen.
I want to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you again later. How can people support you? How can they help? You offer membership opportunities through Western Justice. Yeah. Folks can find all the information on the website.
Right. So the membership is the big thing, because the more members I have, I should have 500,000 members. I mean, really, we should be, with the demographic that we take care of, we should be bigger than the NRA. And that is, if we were doing that, we would be able to stop anything, and one thing I've learned when I worked for Forrest Lucas was how to play the game in DC and how to get that done. Obviously, we got the Hammonds pardon. We did a lot of good stuff. I can stop things with just phone calls and not have to even go to DC. I don't even like to go to DC.
Right.
But I can stop a lot of things with just phone calls and paperwork, sending it over there, just because of the people who I am associated with now and associate me with doing the right thing. So
let me ask you about something that you are working on right now in Pocatello.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this goes, the broad question here would be, how do you outreach? How do you reach people? You're working on a media project right now. You're working on a documentary in Pocatello, Idaho. Tell me about that.
So it's a really interesting situation, and this is all word of mouth. People, where one thing about Western Justice, when some of the other organizations that you would think would be behind people in situations like this don't get involved with that type of stuff. They call me. They call me and they go, okay, can you help us out? And I do a lot of that behind the scenes where people don't even know it's happening. I mean, there's a lot of that kind of stuff I do. Pocatello, there's some generational, seventh generation family, settling families in that area.
The original founders of the community.
Yeah. And they are getting done dirty, and they don't know what to do because they didn't know where to turn. They've got a judge they've got 31, 32 motions already that the judge won't even hear. And they're very legitimate. They've got this judge, so basically it's the real life Yellowstone going on over there. I mean, that's what it is. The whole premise behind Yellowstone is that they're trying to take the land to build a big development, an airport, all that stuff. This is the real life version of that. But these people, and they joke about it because they call it more of the trailer park Yellowstone, because the original ranch house, which was probably fancy back then, is a little square brick house, and it's in great shape, but it's probably only 900 square feet. Right. It's got 2 rooms and a very small living room and a kitchen.
There's a connection between one of the people that you're highlighting in this documentary, and you told me a story about asking Larry Mahan one time who could beat you.
Yeah. There's an interview, a famous interview out there of Larry Mahan, a reporter asking him who, when he was in his prime, they're like, who could beat you? I mean, can anybody beat you?
Right. And I'm having trouble imagining Larry saying anybody could.
Yeah. Well, he did say it, and he said that there's one guy that he's glad never comes to town, hardly ever. And it was part of this family, a guy named Wolf Hart, and he is wilder than the March hare, 80 years old and still wild. But he said that there was this guy. He says, I'm glad he hardly ever comes to town from Pocatello
because he could beat.
Oh yeah, and I won't say why. Why he said he wouldn't come to town, but that's. I mean, and in the Hart house there. There's a 1939, and I took a picture of it and posted it, a 1939 World Championship saddle from Madison Square Gardens. And it was Harry Hart Sr., won the steer wrestling in Madison Square Gardens in 1939.
I'll be darned.
And the stories that go along with them hooking up and going, having to drive this little pickup with a trailer all the way back to Madison Square Gardens to go do that.
Pretty amazing.
But yeah, they're getting run over right now from the city council, and you can't go telling people that the judge is corrupt and all that stuff. But all the evidence leads to there's some major issues going on with the people that are in charge there.
When are they gonna? When is this documentary gonna be out?
Hopefully, will be the first couple of episodes. We're gonna do it like a 4-part series.
Right.
So hopefully the first couple will be out in the next month or two.
Joined by Dave Duquette, actually at Dave's home in Hermiston, Oregon, talking about the Western way of life, talking about Western Justice, the organization that you have started, that you are. I mean, this is not. There's not some great big board of directors someplace running Western Justice.
No.
You're it.
Well, I have some.
You got some help.
Yeah, I've got some key members like Gary Bays is on my board of directors, and Greg Kimmel. They're some of my great friends, but also have the same mentality about what it is. And Gary Bays is my senior counsel too, and he's probably one of the most storied attorneys in the agriculture world, all the way back to the Nixon administration, and doing stuff there.
Do you, in any way, shape, or form, agriculture's issues are in some ways different, in some ways the same from, some of the things that we're talking about, Western lifestyle, Western sports, horses, things like that. Obviously, there's a lot of crossover between our industries and the agriculture industry. In agriculture, they're doing things like fighting for water rights and having those kinds of issues. Just the sheer fact that less than, 1.5% of the population of the country feeds the world. Is there crossover there? I guess is what I'm getting at. Are you crossing over with Beef Council, or I'm just throwing out names? I'm not sure if you cross over.
There is a lot of crossover, but there's also one of the things that's really tough for me in this whole, and I've seen it so much. I want to bring everybody together,
right?
But some of the big organizations, I won't mention them, but if it's not their idea or they're not the ones that get the public notice on it, they don't want to do anything with it. And that's the sad part.
Yeah.
And in agriculture as a whole, like with what we saw in California with the cage-free eggs, started in 2008, the Proposition 2, and then it turned into, once the egg growers in California had to go all cage-free, and they couldn't compete with the 29 other states that sent 7 billion eggs to California already. At that point, California consumed 9 billion eggs. They only produced 7 billion when they're at their height, or 2 billion when they're at their height. So they had 7 billion eggs coming from 29 other states. Well, so then the California egg growers eating I call it eating your own.
Right.
They got behind a deal called Proposition 12, which basically says if you don't produce to California standards, you can't sell in California. So that raised the cost of eggs. But it's also against the Dormant Commerce Clause. We actually, when I was at Protect the Harvest, we filed and paid for and filed a federal court case with 13 states attorneys generals against California. And at that point, Boston had done what they call Question 3, which is the same thing. And we filed another 13 states attorney generals filed against Boston.
I'll be darned. So, okay, you just talked about California, Boston, opposite coast.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about Pocatello, Idaho.
Mm-hmm. Los Angeles.
I guess where I'm going with this is this, Dick. For people who are involved in our lifestyle, people who want to stand on behalf of our lifestyle, do we need to be aware of what's happening in our local communities, whether they be in Florida, Washington, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, California, Iowa, Texas, Oklahoma? Are there issues? I already know the answer to this question, which is yes. But are there issues that crop up in front of city councils, county commissioners, in subcommittees of state legislatures that all of a sudden you find out about and go, oh, crap, we need to do something with this right now?
Right. Yeah, all the time. All the time that happens. We stopped 3 bills. We were the catalyst for stopping 3 different bills here in Oregon just this session. So we were able to rally a bunch of folks and bring a bunch of folks together to stop 3 different things that were going to be detrimental to our industry and our way of life. I mean, this is how stupid it is. There was one that was going to go an anti-trapping and anti-fur ban, or fur ban, and that would have banned the sale of felt hats in Oregon.
Huh. Like this one?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, fur products. It's a fur product. But the greatest thing that people can do, and especially at a county level or a city level, small towns, and we've done this in Missouri, we've done it all over, is they call me and they go, okay, we got this coming through. There was one in Missouri, of all places, where the county commissioners were going, and it was a rural county, and the county commissioners were going to make it so that there was a law that if you had more than 5 animals on your place, livestock, you had to have a CAFO license. Didn't matter how big your place was, you had to have a CAFO license.
Okay, define that license.
So, combined animal feeding operation license, which is a feedlot.
With 5 animals?
Yeah. So they didn't know any better. And they were just going to pass this. Well, we helped to organize a bunch of, they ended up in one of the county commission meetings with about 600 plus people just packed in there and outside and just protesting this deal and coming to talk about it, and it got it stopped. But that right there takes one good, I call it the Aaron Brockovich deal, where you in one town, you got to have that one Aaron Brockovich that'll go hustle everybody and do it. And there's always one to do it.
Right.
But and we can give them the game plan.
Right.
And help them out. And that's what we do a lot.
You're dealing with, I think I'm right in saying this, you're dealing with pretty well organized activist groups. And if the thing in Los Angeles is any indication, you're dealing with people who aren't afraid to just literally wait you out.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
We've got with the 24-hour news cycle comes an attention span for people in this country of about 24 hours, or maybe less. Yeah. And for an issue to continue to live for 2.5 years, must be its own special challenge all by itself.
Oh yeah, and that is hard. That's what I talked about earlier. I didn't want to, I was talking to my better half Molly about this earlier. With people calling me and saying, "Hey, what did we do? What's going on with LA? Did it pass? Did it do this?" And you guys just haven't talked about it. Well, we have talked about it a little bit, but it got to where it was so stale, and people got tired of hearing about it. You got tired of hearing me saying, "Hey, maybe next week you're going to vote on it," which we kept the hearing through the city council and through our lobbyists, but it just kept going on and on.
Right.
So, I didn't want to sit there and keep beating that horse, with everybody. And so now we're going down there, like I said, on Tuesday to go. We're finally getting some in-person meetings. We're all going to testify in front of the city council in their public comment deal. So we'll have a bunch of cowboy hats and some charros and the Compton Cowboys and people like that down there.
Where do people find that information if they'd like to at least write a letter, send an email?
It's on www.westernjustice.info.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's where all the information's at.
That's where everything's at.
Is there anything else right now that is kind of simmering under the surface that you're keeping an eye on?
Yeah, there's a lot. All of this 30 by 30 stuff that's going on, there's a lot of property issues. I'm working with some of the big land folks that are out there.
Define the 30 by 30 thing.
Well, basically, the 30 by 30 means that by 2030, 30% of our land in the United States is going to be free roaming, free range, which and they're going to keep going with that. They keep pushing on that stuff. The other thing is the cattle deal. The cattle narrative. We have a scientific study that's going to, without a doubt, prove that cattle are actually good for the environment, a net positive, not a net negative. Nobody, I don't care if it's cattle organizations, I don't care if it's the biggest scientists around, nobody's equated what we're going to equate. Basically, what it's going to equate is that if you, and this is all about rangeland,
right?
Cattle out on rangeland. So basically what it's going to equate is it's going to equate that if you leave grass fallow, which is what cap and trade and carbon credits do, if you leave grass fallow or forage type plants fallow and you don't graze them off, not only do we have these huge wildfires, but in the spring, if it doesn't burn up, in the spring, over the winter, there's been some kind of an oxygen deprivation event, whether it's depending on your climate, whether it's heavy rain or it's snowpack. When that goes away, in the spring, the new grass comes on and all that old grass disappears, right?
Right.
So for the most part, there'll still be some in there. But in that decomposition process, if a cow would have consumed everything that it could in that area, the GHGs, the greenhouse gases, and the carbon and all that, it's consumed and brought into that, sequestered by that animal. And the farts and the burps that the cows do are way less than if they would have left that, say, let's just put 100 acres on it. If one cow can consume 100 acres of grass in a year,
right,
then that 100 acres, all of that went up because it was left to decompose in the spring. There's way more emissions than a cow.
Oh, sure.
So, and then,
which seems logical.
I mean, if you got two brain cells clicking together every once in a while, cows aren't worse than cars, like they're saying. But the people in the cities are believing that.
Yeah. We could do a whole nother hour on why it's, as we grow further and further away from an agrarian lifestyle, mm-hmm. and closer to everybody living in town.
Urban, yeah. And
I used the statistic. I haven't looked at it in a while. It's like less than 2%, less than 1% of the people in this country raise all of our food. Mm-hmm. the farther we get away from that agrarian lifestyle, the easier it is to convince folks who live in town who maybe have never been out on a farm
that we need to eat factory meat, the scientific meat, lab-born meat. That's the scary part to me, because our market right now, you look at what's going on. When they have $4 calves the other day, that scares me.
Yeah.
I mean, it scares the hell out of me. But we have to make sure our cattle ranchers are not disappearing. They need to get well paid for sure. But China just became just in the last year became the third largest producer of cattle, of beef in the world. That's just scary too. Scare everybody.
Yeah.
But we're cutting back from what they just did in Ireland. Did you see what they did in Ireland?
Well, I read into, if this is what you're referring to, they were trying to. There wasn't some consideration being given, basically, to putting a whole bunch of cattle down.
Yeah, half their dairy yard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so asinine with all the grass that they have there. So if you think about cap and trade, and which we have here in Oregon, because our last governor did it by executive order. She couldn't pass it with a ballot initiative. She couldn't get it passed through the legislature, so she did an executive order. But cap and trade and the carbon credit deal is the carbon credit. You have to leave that ground mostly fallow, not totally fallow. So all they're doing with what they're
just going to let it sit and grow.
Yeah, with what they're saying are doing or they need to do, they're actually exacerbating the situation by doing it. So our grazing study, we need to come up. We've got some funding. We've got about a quarter of the funding right now coming in, but we need help from people, and that's why we have a fundraiser up on our platform, Rural America in Action, to raise some funds. If I had the video I just put out with Congressman Massey just filleting John Kerry, it's pretty cool. Everybody should watch it, but it's got 80,000 views on it.
Right.
If I had $5 from all of those people, we'd have the money to go start this study.
Westernjustice.info. What other social media, or where else can folks find it?
Everywhere. We're on about every platform. Yeah. So Western Justice and Rural America in Action is our platform that has fundraising. I mean, that's another big thing. We got, we can do fundraising, our crowdfunding, petitions and polls and surveys. And we're doing that because the bigger groups like change.org or some of the other fundraising groups, if you dig into them, you look at who they donate to the people that are trying to put us out of business. So don't put your fundraisers on GoFundMe and change.org, for petitions and all that, because that's, ours, any money made, the residual money made off of that thing goes straight into Western Justice's 501c3.
Thanks for inviting me into your home.
Thanks for being here, Steve.
I asked Dave for 25 or 30 minutes. He's given me way more than that, which I'm actually not surprised at, oddly enough. Good luck in Los Angeles. Have a safe trip, and I hope that all goes well. That's happening as we're visiting on the second Friday in August 11th. That's happening next Tuesday.
Yep.
And so I hope I hear a positive report when it's all said and done.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Steve.
Dave Duquette joining us. Thank you for watching and for joining us on the Steve Kenyon Podcast.